Okay, we're going to go over the answers from NS 1 through 3 that you're reviewing for your test tomorrow. On NS 1A, we did number 5, which is 11. Then on NS 1B, we did numbers 4 and 6. 4 was 15, and we probably need to clarify that is 15 meters. And then number 6 is choice D. On NS 1C and D, number 1 was -4. Number 3 was -10 and a fourth, or you could say -10.25. Number 9 was 5 and a fourth, or you could say 5.25. Moving on to NS2, NS2A, number 7 was choices A and E. NS2B, number 5 was choice B. NS2C, number 1 was -10/7, which we could write as -1 3/7. Number 6 was C. 7 was the first, third, and last choice. I call them A, C, and E. Number 9 was 1 and 17/33. NS2D, number 4 was C. Number 7 was A. And number 13 was C. And then NS3, number 2 was -14.4 feet, and you could write that as 14.4 feet below the water surface. Number 4 was $106.80. Number 5 was D. And then number 7, part A were the first 3 choices. Part B was $179.40. Now we're going to go back through and go over questions. If you missed any of these, you can go back and watch the explanations for the specific questions. NS1A, number 5. What do you add to -11 to get 0? Well, -11 and 11 are opposites. So you can add opposites to get 0. So what's the opposite of -11? +11. 1B, number 4. If a dune buggy drives from an elevation of 10 meters below sea level to an elevation of 5 meters above sea level, what is the vertical distance the dune buggy traveled? Well, it starts here at -10 and goes up to +5. So I might think, okay, well, so from -10 we keep going up to -5, to 0, to +5. That's a distance of +15 meters. You could think of it this way. You could say the absolute value of -10 plus the absolute value of 5 to get the distances, and 10 plus 5 is 15. Number 6, what represents the distance between the 2 points on the number line? Well, from this point to 0 is -2.5, and from 0 to this point is +6.5. And so you could take the absolute value of -2.5 and add the absolute value of 6.5, and of course the absolute value of a positive is positive. Absolute value is just distance, so 2.5 plus 6.5, and that's where answer choice D comes from. NS1C, number 1, what is the value of this expression? Well, you could just go through and work one part at a time. And there's different ways we can do that. We could regroup and say, okay, well, -3.8 minus 10 plus 7.5 plus 2.3 might be a little quicker to work. Whoops. So I get negative 13.8 plus 9.8, which is negative 4. Number 3, what's the value of this expression? We could regroup and say 3 plus 1/4. I'm just getting my positives together and my negatives together. Plus negative 5.5 plus negative 8. Just so that I can work with these, I'd prefer to work with decimals and say, okay, 3 plus 0.25. And then this plus and negative, which we have on both of these. If you say a positive times a negative, you get a negative 5.5. You say a positive times a negative, you get a negative 8. So I get 3.25 minus 13.5, which is negative 10.25. Number 9, what's the value of this expression? We could go to decimals. Got a couple options. We could say, okay, that's 3.5 plus 1.75, which is 5.25. Or you could say 3.5, which is go around the world, get an improper fraction. We get 7/2 plus 1 3/4 is 7/4. Get a common denominator, 2 and 4 both go into 4. So we get 14/4 plus 7/4 is 21/4. We can divide that out. 4 will go into 21 5 whole times with 1 remaining to get 5 1/4. For 2a, number 7, which expressions have a product that is negative? Okay, so we have a negative times a negative times a negative times a positive. So we think a negative times a negative is a positive, times another negative is a negative, times a positive is still a negative. On this next one, we have a negative times a negative times a positive times a positive. Notice that we have a negative times a negative is a positive. Then we multiply by positive, positive, and we still have a positive. And then we have a positive times a negative times a positive times a negative. Well, that means we have a positive times a negative is negative. We have a negative times a positive is negative. Negative times a negative is a positive. Then we have a negative times a positive times a positive times a negative times a positive. So negative times a positive is negative, times positive is negative, times negative is positive, times positive is positive. Then we have a negative times a positive times a negative times a negative. So we have a negative times a positive is negative. Negative times a negative is positive, but that positive times a negative is a negative. Notice that the number of odds or negatives you had every time. You had an odd amount of negatives. 3. And then you had an even amount of negatives. So that equals a positive. And then you had an even amount of negatives, or 2 of them. So that equaled a positive. You had an even number of negatives. There were 2. So that equaled a positive. Then you had an odd number of negatives, 3. So that equaled a negative. Number 5 of NS2B. In which situation could the quotient be used to answer the question? We'll just look and see if it matches. A hot air balloon descended, means negative, 24.5 meters in 7 minutes. What's the rate of descent per minute? So negative 24.5 meters divided by 7 minutes. What's the value of this expression? This is the same as saying negative 5 over 1 times 2 over 7, which equal negative 10 over 7. And we know that that's the same thing as saying 7 will go into negative 10 one whole time, so we got a negative in front of that, by the way, with a remainder of 3. What's the value of this expression? We just follow PEMDAS, order of operations. Didn't have any parentheses or exponents, but we do multiply and divide from left to right. So, negative 5.85 times 3, we can go to a calculator. And we get negative 17.55, and then we'll divide by 2. And we get negative 8.775. What all is equivalent? We could go through and just use order of operations. Negative 3 times 24 is negative 72 divided by 4 is negative 18. So choice A. Negative 3 divided by 4 times 24 is negative 18. Then the next one, negative 4 divided by 3 times 24 is negative 32. Then we have 24 times 3 divided by negative 4 is negative 18. 24 divided by negative 3 is negative 8 times 4 is negative 32. And 3 times negative 24 is 72 divided by negative 4 is negative 18. So A, C, and E match. Number 9, we're going to divide. Let's change them both to fractions. We get negative 10 thirds divided by negative 11 fifths. So we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. I get a positive 50 over 33, and 33 will go into 50 one whole time with 17 remaining. I just go to my calculator and say, okay, 11 divided by 20, and my calculator comes out to 0.55. So it's 2.55. Number 7, once again, I can go to my calculator. 2 divided by 5 in my calculator is 0.4, so I get negative 3.4. Number 13, I could check my answer choices. Get negative 3.5, negative 3.125, negative 3.8, and that last one would come out to a funny number. Negative, let's see. It'd be 83 over 1, so negative 83. So answer choice C is the only one that works. In S3, number 2, a scuba diver is swimming 18 feet below the water's surface. The diver swims up slowly at 0.6 feet per second, going up for 5 seconds, and then swims up for 2 more seconds at 0.3 feet per second. What is the diver's new depth? So we have several elements to this to think about, but we'll just go through and mark them as we go. So, where does the diver start? 18 feet below the surface. So starts at negative 18. Then swims up at 0.6 feet per second for 5 seconds. So plus 0.6 times 5. And then swims up for 2 more seconds at 0.3 per second. So plus 0.3 for 2 seconds. I can just evaluate this and say, okay, that's negative 18 plus 3 plus 0.6, which equals negative 14.4. Number 4, Sandra's trying to find the best deal on a new toaster oven. She checks the price each week and tracks how much it changes. If the toaster oven cost $115 when she started recording the price, and she decided to buy it after week 3, how much would she pay for the toaster oven? I would just follow this table and say, okay, she starts at $115. Let's add $10.50. Well, now you're at $125.50. We'll subtract $13. So now it's $112.50. Then we'll subtract $5.70. So now we're at $106.80. And that's where we get the price. A weather balloon floats into the sky from a valley, starts at an elevation of negative 7.25 feet, and floats up to an elevation of 88 6/8 feet before getting stuck at the top of a tree. How far did the balloon travel upwards? Well, this is one of those that you're finding the total from a negative up to 0, and then it keeps going to a positive. So I could just say the absolute value of negative 7.25 plus 88 6/8. I could change those to decimals and say, okay, that was a negative, but now it's a positive 7.25 plus 0.75. And when I add those together, I get 96. Number 7, Ellie started a new job and wants to keep track of her finances. She makes $100 a week at her new job. Select all the expressions that can be used to calculate Ellie's bank balance over the 4 weeks if she started with $20 in her bank account. Okay. So let's keep this in mind. She starts at $20, and what she spends is actually subtracting. But she's adding $100 every week as she goes. So, she subtracts this, adds 100, subtracts the next amount, adds 100, subtracts the next amount, adds 100, subtracts the next amount, adds 100, and she started at 20. So choice A worked. Choice B, she added 420, and the total she subtracted here was $240.60. So that's where that came from. Then this choice C, she started at 20, subtracted money, added 100, subtracted money, added 100, subtracted money, added 100, subtracted money, adding 100. Okay, and our last part of this, part B, how much does she have in her bank account after the 4th week? You can just follow through these amounts, and you'll come up with the fact that she ends up with $179.40.